today's video, we're going to be judging every single update ever released for Minecraft, at least all major updates post-release. So I was giving you my personal experience with the updates and what I actually think about these updates as a whole. By the way, before we get into this video, I'd like to ask you guys to hit the subscribe button down below as we're trying to hit 10k before the end of April, and be highly appreciated if you help out with that. So I'll leave a like for the YouTube algorithm. Either way, let's start off with a few easy ones before we get into the ones that are going to be a bit more decisive to pick through, and we're going to start off with 1.6. 1.6 was known as the Horse Update, which was released in July of 2013. It added many new features such as horse leads, coal blocks, carpets, resource packs, and a new launcher. This update is about of a middle ground as a middle ground can be. There really isn't too much interesting happening here, aside from the fact that Mojang continues to use some other features from actual mod packs, as horses originated from More Creatures mod. But with an update as middle ground and as lackluster in features as this one, I say it's a perfect suggestible C tier. With that, we move on to update 1.7, which I'm pretty sure majority of people who've ever heard of Minecraft should have an idea of what this update is. This update is known as the update that changed the world by adding several new biomes as well as a whole entire new world generation. This update would also almost last an entire year before 1.8 would come out, and is also known to be one of the most stable versions of Minecraft in existence, allowing for it to become the most modded Minecraft version to date at this point in time. That may change in the future though. This one mainly due to the fact of the sheer amount of mod support that was with this update and how just nice this update was in general. I want to give 1.7 a nice B tier. Whilst not adding too much in the grand scheme of things, the world generation part of it has been used up until the 1.17 update, when it's finally going to get changed again to adapt to this new caving system. The next update on the list is Minecraft 1.1 edition. This version honestly didn't add too much to the update itself, as it really only contained spawn eggs, a couple of new biomes, and the super flat world type. This update ultimately didn't add too many new things and ultimately becomes a more of a forgettable update aside from spawn eggs and of course the super flat world type, which ends up becoming customizable in a later update, putting this update nicely in the D tier. 1.15 is often touted to be one of the most forgettable and underwhelming updates out of recent times. And whilst I do understand that reasoning, because it really only added bees and a few other little bits and pieces to the world, 1.15 is actually responsible for fixing a majority of the bugs that started to pop up after 1.14 came out. As well as in 1.15, they recoded the entire rendering engine to make it just act a whole lot better, hence the reason why updates post 1.15 look a lot brighter and shinier than any update beforehand. Ultimately, 1.15 is just a really good optimization update, and it's just there to help fix some things out, and I'd like to put it comfortably in the C tier. The next update that I want to cover is the Redstone update, or 1.5. Now, ultimately, this is probably by far one of the biggest updates to do with Redstone, as the majority of other updates do include little bits and pieces to go along with Redstone, but this one included a massive change, adding in Redstone blocks, hoppers, droppers, comparators, quartz, and all the other bits and pieces that are very highly used in Redstone machines to this very day. As a person who avidly uses Redstone in a lot of my own personal builds, I do believe this update serves a very important role for existing in the first place, and without it, definitely wouldn't lead to a lot less complicated and fun Redstone builds to this day, and that's where I amply put 1.5 in the A tier. Update 1.4, the pretty scary update, was definitely an interesting update of its time. Coming in around the time where Minecraft originally began to absolutely blow up, it was definitely, I guess, a mixed update when it comes down to things. The key features of this update being withers, anvils, command blocks, beacons, wither skeletons, and other bits and pieces along with it, ultimately making it an update that does be considered valuable with the items that it comes with to this day, but it does seem to be an underwhelming update overall, ultimately putting this update nicely in the C tier. Update 1.0, the Adventure Update Part 2. This would be the update that the game is completely fully released on, and is also the follow-up to the update beforehand, being the Adventure Update 1. The core features of this game is the end, enchanting, potions, and breeding, but it also brings a few collection of other things like villages along to the game, as well as the fabled hardcore mode. Ultimately, this feels like the perfect launch update for its time, and would definitely work out far better than any update beforehand, and then a few collection of the updates following up behind it. Being the update that preceded the game into the official release state, it definitely did well enough to be considered a fairly decent update, putting 1.0 comfortably slightly in the B tier. Update 1.2. The first few updates following the release of the game just were unnamed updates aside from being the update code number. But the main features of these updates were jungles, iron golems, ocelots, and redstone lamps, as well as a few other different things. This would also be the lead-in for the next update, with adding a few different little changes to villages before the major changes that were set to come in 1.3. But ultimately, 1.2 was another underwhelming update, not really bringing too much to the table aside from an extra biome and a new mob type. And will also join 1.1 comfortably in the D tier. Update 1.3. Again, another update that follows the terms of having no actual name to it. The main features of this update was villager trading, temples, emeralds, and ender chests, as well as a bunch of other little bits and pieces such as extra redstone pieces, some writable books, and an adventure mode. 1.3 did add a whole new thing to the table with villager trading, but back in 1.3 these trades were more of a scammy thing in comparison to what we'll end up getting later on down the line. Either way, 1.3 did end up adding a bunch of key mechanics that are still widely used and accepted as part of the actual game to this very day, comfortably sitting in the B tier. Update 1.8, aka the Bountiful update. This update would ultimately be the longest running update, lasting over a year until 1.9 would be released, going through the entire process when Microsoft brought Minecraft. Ultimately, this game is definitely a mixed one. It's a well played one considering the fact it was the last update that the old combat was present on. It also introduced granite, andesite, and diorite, which is definitely one of the most controversial additions in a while, becoming a main annoyance for most people who enjoy the mining side of the game, not wanting to have more crap that clutters their inventory. And whilst by now most builders and a lot of mod makers have been making more stuff that is compatible and uses these type of blocks, still ultimately overall an annoyance. This would also add ocean monuments and all the beautiful wondrous blocks that came with them, which are definitely far more appreciated in comparison to the other bits and pieces of this update. Ultimately, this update is definitely one of the mixed ones. This update is definitely one of the most well-known ones, considering almost every single multiplayer server still supports this update to this very day, but doesn't precisely mean it's a great update. Putting 1.8 nicely in the C tier, being an all-rounder. 1.9. You all know we'll get into this one eventually, and I feel like this is definitely one of those updates that has just one of the most counterintuitive list changes that you could ever see in an update. There's so many good things about this update, but for every single good thing, it also brings a bunch of more annoying things, and for the big thing that is ultimately loved for this update, it was counteracted with the combat changes of the update. So let's roll through the new things. End cities, elytra wings, combat changes, outer end island, shulkers, shield, the fantastic mending enchantment, as well as the ability to use your next hand. Ultimately, I love a lot of the features about this update, and I honestly believe I love the idea behind the update, but the biggest flaw of this update was just the execution. There are so many good ideas going around with this update, but ultimately how it was all implemented within this update definitely could have gone way better. The biggest thing that just went so wrong was just sheerly the combat changes to this game. The thing that still leaves a massive rift between Minecraft players. A lot of Minecraft players hate it, a lot of Minecraft players love it. Bedrock Edition never got to see these type of changes, and ultimately it just leaves us in a split path. 1.9, for all the good things that it did add, it was ultimately just countered by the worst decision that we've seen in Minecraft updates so far, ultimately putting 1.9 slightly in the E tier, but just outside of reach of the D tier. Ultimately, there is a lot to love about this update, but the combat changes definitely ends up souring the entire pack for me. 1.10. As the follow-up update of 1.9, it definitely had a lot of things to improve upon, and that didn't quite help the fact that it dropped only a few months after 1.9. 1.10 would barely add anything new. Really, the only thing of noticeable things is the changes of skeletons and zombies in the deserts and the snow biomes, as well as polar bears and magma blocks being added. Majority of other things in this update weren't really cared that much about, and most things in this update is just something unnoticeable that most people would probably play throughout their entire Minecraft playthrough without even knowing that these things were actually a thing to care about. This update would also be the start of a trend of collection of updates that would just ultimately lackluster and disappointment in a time of need where the Minecraft game was dying, yet all we got were these lackluster updates, putting 1.10 squarely in the F tier. 1.11, the exploration update, would follow this one, and ultimately with the same effect, aside from adding the beautiful woodland mansions which most people won't ever actually explore anymore, as well as the much used and much needed shulker boxes. 1.11 was just another one of those lackluster updates that ultimately just didn't help in a time where this game needed something new. 1.11 will be joining 1.9 in the E tier. 1.12, the World of Color update would be much of the same, only adding a few key things, such as glazed terracotta, as well as concrete, as well as improving the wool color textures. Ultimately, I love the additions of all of these blocks, but they could have just been saved for another major update entirely. With its features as minimal as this, 1.12 joins 1.10 in the F tier. 1.13, Update Aquatic. Update Aquatic would be the much needed update that Minecraft has been waiting for a very long time at this point. Revamping the entire oceans, adding in new biomes, and changing the swimming mechanics entirely. This update would be the start of what would end up becoming the revival of Minecraft with these entirely new revamped systems that will bring more life to the players that were playing for a long time and bring back the old guys. If it wasn't for the phantoms also introduced in this update, 1.13 would sit in the S tier, but those phantoms being the absolute pain in the ass they are, 1.13 sits snugly in the A tier. 1.14, the Village and Pillage update. This would be one of the biggest updates to date at the time, re-enhancing the entire villager system, adding in pillages, adding in raids, as well as revamping all the textures within the game. Ultimately give Minecraft a much more brighter, funner feel that would be enhanced upon in the render updates in 1.15. 1.14 would usher in a new era for Minecraft, reviving the Minecraft entirely with it reaching a new peak popularity, so goddamn close to the old one. Ultimately, everything about this update has something to love to it with very little cons to go with it, putting 1.14 snugly in the S tier. Last but not least, we have update 1.16, which will follow 1.14 in the footsteps of re-enhancing so many things with Minecraft, overhauling the Nether system to the point where it's now its own speedrunning category, just due to the sheer changes of how the progression system works. And unlike 1.9, where the ideas were massive but executed poorly, the 1.16 update would have as many massive, awesome ideas that would ultimately be executed so damn well. This update is just a beautiful swan song for the game, putting 1.16 comfortably in the S tier with 1.14. And there you have it, the ultimate Minecraft update tier list. I want to first thanks to Cool for inspiring the idea. Go check out his video, linked in the description down below. If you disagree with any of my personal opinions that I put out in this video, please let me know in the comments down below what is your preference for it. What updates would you move and what tiers would you move those updates to? But until next time, I've been your host, Crisair, the Minecraft guy, and until next time guys, goodbye.